We need to take 64 thousandths off this piece of key stock. So let's touch off, zero our dials. I'm going to try to take it all in one pass. Okay, there's our touch off. Okay guys, we're handheld. We're working on making our step key for our key slot here. I've already got a layout line on the key. I already thinned this down a little bit. It was a little too tall. So we're looking, the depth of our key is going to be 180 thousandths. And let's see if this will show up here. So we got about a 20 thousandths clearance because we want this key to sit on the step that we're cutting. Okay, I'm all set up. We're going to take 37 thousandths per side. We've already got our depth set. We've got knee locked. We've got the y-axis locked. So let's go for it. A little oil. Okay, we're handheld again. So we were looking for 550. So we missed it, depending on how much pressure you put on the half a thousandths that way. I'm going to say it's a thousandths off. And we're just using dials. So, okay with that. Our fit, I got just a tiny bit of movement depending on where you're at on this key slot. I think that'll be okay. So what we're going to do now is cut this. Well, first we're going to face the ends off. Then we're going to drill and counterbore 2 screw holes, and then we're going to cut this in half. our alignment keys are done. So before we cut it in half, we put a couple of witness marks on there so that we always install them the way they were machined. Let's drop in our screws. Try not to knock it off the bench. All right, let me take this over to the mill and let's see how it fits. Okay, it looks pretty good. We got a little bit of wiggle, maybe like 0.02. So if you're gonna do anything critical, you're gonna tram it in anyways. But at least you can drop it on and be real close. And I'm not going to do it now, but at some point we'll run an indicator to see how close we are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. We're finally putting this, or reassembling, the Walter dividing head. We got everything laid out. We even went to the trouble of printing out a bunch of our photos from the disassembly. And most of this is common sense, mechanical, but heck, if you got the photos, use them. So one of the things here, I've been looking at the worm carrier assembly here, and this is how it came apart. And I was a little suspicious of the location of this snap ring, because if you look at the way this is made, this bearing goes on this end here, and it goes on the shaft like this. Okay, our gear is out here. Now the gear does not do anything to set the end plate. It's just floating out here. Okay. So something's got to hold this bearing in place. Now on this end, we've got, hopefully this is showing up, we've got an adjustment nut and corresponding lock nut that'll bind that in its final position. Okay. And when I disassembled this, what I found was this snap ring was on this side, and then this nut was over here. Well, that's not going to work too well. There is the groove that this was in is a bit of a fat groove, so it could theoretically move, but I don't think it's made for that. Now this end, the only thing that can hold the bearing is there's a locator pin in here that engages this slot, and I'm sure the intended purpose is to keep this bearing from rotating. But the way it was assembled is that pin was also supporting this bearing so that it wouldn't, so that it had something to bear against, and that just doesn't seem right. But looking in here, there's a snap ring groove. It's like, okay, why would they put in a snap ring groove if they weren't going to put in a snap ring? So I'm pretty sure Mr. Bubba had worked on this at one time, and more evidence to that is take a look at that locator pin. I mean, there's no reason for that to be bent. At least not that much. I mean, sometimes you'll put a little bend in them to help retain them if it's in a loose bore. But it shouldn't have been bent that much. So I've made a new pin. We're going to use a spring pin instead of a solid pin. So I'm going to put this snap ring back in where I'm pretty sure it belongs. So let's go ahead and start assembling. I'm going to put a little oil on things here. think this has to go in there first. There we go. Now we got to get that slot. Just trying to feel for it here. There it is right there. Okay. I'm going to get this nut started to help hold everything together before I try that snap ring. Put just a dab of oil on here.
Let's try these work.
I'm not going to go all the way down. I just want something to hold that in there while I put the snap ring in. And I've still got this other pin to put in as well. Okay, that's probably far enough. Okay. These are actually external snap ring pliers. I can't find my internal ones of this size. Let me take a look at it through the magnifier. Okay, looks good. We're in there. Okay, I like it. I don't know what I would do without that magnifying glass, guys. That's probably my most used tool at the workbench here. I'm just going to straighten this ring up a little bit just to put it on center, just for looks if nothing else. Alright, so that end is in. Now I've got to get this pin in there and lined up with the groove on our bearing. I'm going to pull that nut back out. I studied this several times, so you can see that the worm is not dead center, and here we have a little bit of bearing showing, here we don't have anything, but this is the only way it can go. Okay, there's our slot. I'm going to shine a light in there to make sure I've got it centered. Okay, right there. Get our pin started. We've got our active atom size hammer and punch here. I'm just going to get this started first. Just double check where we're at. Okay. almost there. Okay, one more tap. Okay. Not sure if you guys can see that, but we got the pin in our slot. Looks good. Okay, this one is trash. And get our nut back in there.
Must be a little burr right at the beginning there. Once we get past that, then it just goes real easy.
So the backlash adjustment, I'm just going to do a test here. So it's got just a tiny bit of drag right now. Back this off of here. Okay, right there it starts to seize up. And if I go a little more, that's pretty tight right there. So I'm going to back off just a smidge. And we're going to make a final adjustment later on. Okay. Alright, so now we need the lock nut. It goes this way.
Let me put one more drop of oil in there.
So the way these lock nuts work is you don't go all the way down. I'm going to go all the way down and then I'm going to back off. I know you guys can't see that, but if I was left-handed it'd be a lot easier. Okay, so I'm all the way down. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off until we have an alignment right there. So these are our two locking screws, and what it'll do, it'll squeeze these two nuts together. You got to have a gap for that to happen, and it'll lock them and prevent them from turning. Okay, here's our screws. I had to do some cleanup on this nut. It was all chowdered up. Bubba had been in here with a punch trying to adjust it. Okay guys, hope you can see okay. I moved the camera around. So we already put our gasket in where the worm carrier assembly goes. Just put a little oil. Okay, and this guy will slide right in here. I might have to move that. That gasket's kind of like a combination gasket and O-ring. let me slide that on there first and bring it right back. Okay, let's try that again. That's a very, very precise fit. There we go. Okay, let's swing this around so you guys can see the other side here. Hopefully you can see that. Let me get a light. Whoever invented these lights that they think you have to have a blink mode, they need to be strung up or something. So, okay, so I don't know if you can see how that worm engages and disengages. Okay, I grabbed a better flashlight. Let me, there we go, hockey puck. Alright, can you guys see in there okay? So here's how the worm assembly engages and disengages. Okay. I'm going to wait on putting the gear on so that we have a little more visibility. So the next items, we've got to get the main bull gear, or worm wheel, I guess would be the proper terminology, and then the shaft. So this is very interesting. Let me get it in frame here. Very interesting how this gear attaches to the shaft. So they've got all these pockets for set screws. This is the only one I've ever seen like this. Pretty unusual. And then the other thing is these bearings are tapered, and the journals are tapered. So the way the shaft is locked, the locking mechanism actually pulls the shaft into the taper and binds the shaft from turning. That's an interesting way to lock up a shaft. The precision of the fit of this gear on that shaft is unreal. I was having a hard time. I was just doing a test fit, and you know, I've been holding the shaft, you know, examining it and so forth, and just the temperature difference was enough that it wouldn't make it fit. So I had to hold on to the gear for a while, warm it up, and then I was able to get it to go on. It's just unbelievable how precise. So, and it's going to be really hard to get it perfectly aligned inside there. So I cheated a little bit. I just warmed it up just to let it expand a little. Oops, I might have got a little too hot. Okay, well, I'm going to try it. Okay, this is the way it goes here. If I can get it in there, there we go. There we go. Okay, I put a little cheater mark out here if I didn't rub it off. Alright, I'm going to have to get in here with the flashlight. I don't know if you guys can see this. To get these set screws lined up and started. Alright, I'm going to do that off camera. And then you have to index all these set screws, grub screws. So it was a little fiddly getting those lined up and in final position, and then I had to, carefully go a little at a time on each one and paying attention mainly on these side ones, how much thread I had exposed so that the gear would center itself to the reliefs that are cut in the spindle. And then also, I had to go back and forth and then use these guys, which push the gear against its seating surface. So it took a while, but got it. And man, I tell you, that was it was a bit of work. So all right, so we're gonna move on to the next item. Guys, how boring would it be if Mr. Bozo never showed up? All right, let me show you what happened. So we had it all together, and let's see if we can get this a little closer here. Turn the light on. See that washer right there? It's actually a like a collar, a thrust collar. It's this one right here. Well, we got a little overconfident and put everything back together without looking at our photos. This photo right here that shows the washer or thrust collar right there. All right. Well, we had to take it apart again and put it in there, but we got it. Okay, so we got our gear in. Set screws are all tightened down evenly. We've checked the worm gear. It engages, disengages. See if we can turn it by hand here. Yep. So that looks good. Okay, so next step. We've got to put our thrust washer and collar on over here. Okay, there's a little pin. Put a little oil on here. All right, so we got to line up that pin. And it does go this way with the oil groove against the thrust surface. Okay, there we go. Well, you know what? Let's before we do that, let me pop that back out of there. We need to get our locking mechanism in there. One visit by Mr. Bozo a day is enough. Okay. All right, so before we do that, we've got our lock. So here's our locking handle with the eccentric on the end. Goes in over here. We've got a dog point grub screw to hold that. Okay, I like that. And then here's our, I guess that would be a shoe for the lock. Goes in there. There we go. Okay, now let's put our thrust washer in there. Our pin is up at the top. Okay. Then we've got our first locking nut. Okay, we're making contact. I'm going to back off just a smidge. We'll line up one hole at the top. Okay, here's our locking nut. Okay, so what we want to do here is line up our 3 screw holes, but we want to leave a little, I'm going to back up a third of a turn here, so we have a little gap, so that when we tighten these screws, it will actually lock those 2 nuts together. And we're just going to run them down till they touch. Okay, let's take our spanner. So now it's turning both nuts at the same time. Just checking to see how much drag we have. Okay, that's too tight. Okay, that feels good right there. And then now let's check our lock. So turning the spindle, turn our lock, boom, locks up. Okay, you can go either direction. There we go, locks up. Okay, so what that does is that little shoe pushes this way and pulls the whole spindle into those tapered bearings, which prevents them from turning. Pretty clever. Okay, just double check these. Might have a little too tight. No, actually feels okay. And our lock is locking. Okay, good, good. I had to put one strap on here. I was having a hard time keeping this thing from just spinning on its own. Trying to get that gear in there. Okay, that looks good. We've got our direct indexing plunger. I think we can put that in now. Okay, so this pin get a little oil on that. Still got a little bit of residue back in there. Wipe her off a couple times. No matter how good you clean, there's always some little pocket that's still got some gunk in it. All right, so order of assembly. That's just an over travel pin. Okay. Keeps it from coming back against here. Okay. No way it can go that way. It's got to go like that. Just eyeballing it here. grub screw. There's a stiff spot in there. I'm going to pull it back out and flip that little dog piece over. See why I put that other clamp on. Thing just keeps wanting to go by itself. Okay, I'm going to flip this guy. That. About there. Let me get an extra drop of oil on that. Okay, that feels really good. Until you put in the grub screw. You know what it is? It's probably a burr on the screw. Yep. All right, we will fix that. Let's take a look. Get my magnifier. Just a little tiny. All right, I'm going to fix that off camera. Be right back. Okay, we hit that with a stone and a little bit of emery cloth. Hopefully that's better. Oh yeah, much better. There's still one little. There's probably a little burr on the on that groove. I think that'll be okay though. We're just gonna go with it. Okay, we're gonna put our clamp rings on before we lose our sanity. This thing won't stay in one position. Okay, this one goes on this side. It's a washer and nut. And this is the one with the veneer on it. Let's give it just a little bit of oil. Just making sure I got the veneer on the correct side. Pretty hard to mess that up, but there's always that Mr. Bozo. Okay, and then there's two bolts that go in underneath. Give them a drop of oil. Before we cinch those down, Loosen these guys up. Actually, let's snug these. Okay. Flip it over. I'm guessing that you can adjust this from the top too, because it wouldn't make sense that you would have to flip this over every time if you wanted to change the angle of the head. Just checking to make sure our surfaces are lining up. Feels like it. Okay. All right, so now if we loosen these up, can we rotate the head? And we can. Okay, good. Yeah, that just wouldn't make any sense that you would have to loosen both up. Okay. Okay, we got our sight glass to put in there. Clean out the excess oil here. I checked a couple different places online trying to find a replacement glass and couldn't find anything that would match up. So we cleaned it up the best we could. I think it'll be okay. Well, maybe not. That wasn't good. I barely even had any pressure on there at all. Now if we can get this out of here without dropping all the plastic pieces inside. There we go. Well, guys, I was thinking it was about quitting time for tonight anyways. We got to figure out what thread that is. It's probably going to be something metric. All right, we got it off the easy out. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to call this a wrap for tonight, and we'll pick her back up tomorrow. Okay, guys, so it was a couple days ago. We were in the process of putting this sight glass in, oil sight glass, and unfortunately it's so old and crusty it snapped right in two. So I did quite a bit of searching on the internet, and and I measured these threads. They're M12 by 1. Kind of a not real unusual, but not real common either. So I did a bunch of searching on the internet and actually found the company that makes these sight glasses, and they're in the Netherlands, and you can't buy directly from them. but I was able to find a US company that reps them, and they have them available. So, okay, great. They were 14 bucks each. You know, a lot for just a piece of plastic, but what the heck, right? And then they had an $8 handling fee or processing fee. So, okay, well, that's still not that bad. And then looked like the shipping was going to be like another 10 bucks on top of that. So I go, all right, you know, I'm into it this far. Let's just go ahead. 30 some dollars. So I tried to order it this morning, and they've got a $50 minimum. And so, okay, so I went through all their products trying to find something I could order that would be usable, you know, to justify the $50 minimum. Well, there was nothing. I couldn't find anything. So, long story short, what we're going to do, I've ordered just a plug, a flange type plug temporarily. But in another video, we're going to try to make one of these. The challenge is the 1 millimeter thread pitch. It works out to about, hold on a second, 25.3 threads per inch. And the South Bend lathe that will do 24 threads per inch or 26 threads per inch. So I think between one of those we'll be able to get a close enough fit that we'll be able to make something that'll work. So I'll have to pick up a piece of acrylic. Not sure what type of material yet, but that'll be another project, and we'll try making one of each, or we'll just make a test plug, one for each thread, and see which one works the best, and then we'll go ahead and make the sight glass. So we're going to skip this part for now and move on. Okay, so this side, we still got our knob to put in there. No big deal. I think I'll put a little drop of blue Loctite on there. I'm just gonna give it a good cronk by hand there. That'll be good enough. We still have a little, well, let's just go ahead and put it in now. The backlash is adjusted by how far this engages. Hopefully the screw's long enough. Uh-oh. Alright guys, let me grab a different screw. Okay, so off camera I found a longer screw. Took a little while to dig through my stash to find one. So we got that set. We're good to go. And we've got to put this gear on permanent. And there's no washers, no shims or anything. It just gets a lock nut or a nut. Hold it. Harbor Freight impact wrench, 3/8. And I got the pressures way down. We're only at about 50 pounds right now because I don't want to over tighten this. Make sure we're going the right way. With a rag. Okay. Just gonna double check it with a All right, we're gonna call that good. All right, before I forget, I want to put a little bit of grease on these gears. Yeah, what the heck, let's do this one too over here. That should be plenty. We don't need to overdo it. So next, we need to put our shaft and gear, shims, thrust washer, and the, I guess you would call this the end bell. All right, so let's put that in there. Bit of oil. Oil up our shaft. The other thing that I don't want to forget is the key. Let's get that in there right now. Let me see if this will. We just double check that that's going to slide over before we get too far down the road here. Okay, feels like she's starting on there. It's a little snug, but she's going. And then I just want to double check that our thrust washer will, yeah, it'll go over. Okay. All right, well, these things are going to fight us the whole way. And I can see through to make sure that there's nothing interfering with our pins here. Okay, now to get that on there without it jumping off, little piece of brass here. Yeah, she's going. Now, let me see if I can get the scale in here. I'll even do two of them. I don't want our thrust washer to jump off of there. running out of room to hold it with my finger behind there. Okay, we're getting close. All right, it looks good. So then we get a washer and 2 nuts. I'm putting the best sides together because these nuts need to lock to each other. And that side is flat. There's some pits, but it is flat. And I'm putting the worst side on the outside. Okay, first things first, we're going to tighten that one. We're just going to snug it, and then we're going to do a test fit. Okay, I don't like that. So I'm thinking the reason they have 2 nuts on here is because you have to set the end play here. Where the shims set the end play for the backlash on the gears. All right, so I need to loosen this up a little bit. Bit of a tap this direction. Let's use our brass. Okay, I like that. Amount of drag, really no drag to speak of. Okay, and then our nut is making contact. I'm going to go a little looser and then bring it back just to get a good feel for it. Okay, so we've got some end play now. Okay, I think that took it out. But we're still turning free, but I can't feel any end play. Need a little for lubrication. Since the shims are setting the backlash on the gears, it shouldn't hurt to have a little extra end play. Okay, I can just barely feel some right now. We're going to go with that. Now, that wrench is not thin enough, and this one certainly isn't. Let me see if I can find a thin 17 millimeter. Be right back. Okay, well, I struck out in the 17 millimeter thin wrench department. But I do have a 11/16, and that's pretty close. So I think that'll be all right. Just a tiny bit of end play. But I think that'll be fine. All right, we're ready to put this together. Let me put a little oil on here. Get everything oiled up good. I'm going to fill the cavity a little bit here as well. Just want to check and make sure our dowel pin holes are clear. Yeah. Let me clean them a little bit. I'll be right back. All right, we blew out our screw holes. There was a little bit of stuff in there, so good thing we checked it. All right, so we're ready to go together. We got everything oiled up. And we got 4 screws that hold this on, 2 dowels. Make sure we get our gear to mesh here. That feels pretty good. Make sure it's just feeling it, see how it, okay, not bad. All right, let's put our screws in. We got 2 short screws for the top and a couple longer ones at the bottom. It's getting heavier as we add parts. Okay, next thing is our collar that goes in here. And this is for the indexing plates. Might have to open that up a little bit to get this started in there. Okay, so off camera I put the screwdriver in our slot down here and just gave it a little tap by hand, and I was able to slide this bushing right in there, no problem. So I want to line up our, and I checked to make sure all the plates are the same. I want to have our numbering at the top, and also this is kind of interesting. These plates also have degree layout. So it's a 9 degree per rotation, and there's 1, and then you've got, you know, minutes of arc in here, or minutes of degree. So it ends up with 9 being on the top. Okay, so let's check that. These are brand new screws. I had to modify them a little bit. I had to grind down the tops of the heads and also the circumference slightly, because there's a little shoulder that these fit down into. Okay, so now we're going to turn this so there we go. Our numbers are vertical. Our 9 degrees is at the top. I might have to grab tap this in a little bit. Still got a ways to go here. I'm going to put that screwdriver back in to wedge this open a little bit. Okay, let me take a look at this thing. I think what's happening is we're catching on the back edge of the relief slit, and I want to make sure that we don't do any damage here. I'm going to pull that back out and put a little extra oil in there. I think we'll use this rim oil. Mainly for corrosion and rust. Okay, there we go. Pretty interesting, as precise as everything else is on this. You would think that they would have lined up the whole pattern, you know, straight across, or maybe one straight up for the vertical position here. Put in our pinch bolt. Well, next I'm going to move things around. We got to put our handle and plunger assembly together. We're getting close to the end here.